We hear this a lot. There was one, never forget this conversation. There was one of the companies we work with, a large multinational, and one of the leaders said to me, it's almost like we're playing against the board, like we're on two different teams. And I feel like I'm an experienced business leader, but I feel like I'm being treated like a school kid. And I'm never nervous in life about anything. I play golf, I do action sports, I do all kinds of stuff. But the 2 weeks leading up to the board meeting, I can hardly sleep. Okay. I'm suddenly not a nice boss to my team. It's like I changed personality, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of. And I'm like shivering, my voice is like funny, and I leave so angry and so frustrated after these meetings, right? And if we think about the human environment of those very critical decisions being made, I mean, one thing is it's not good that anyone feels that way, but if you think about the quality of the decisions being made in that environment is not in the shareholders' interest. It's probably not in the customer's interest. It's probably not even in the regulators' interest that boards become that hard on the governance. So it's like, have boards gone overboard? Have they become too, has the culture become
The answer is
too,
yes.
or
the
what do you
answer
think?
is yes, because across the world, the regulators are pushing for a board-managed organization. The challenge is when you have a board-managed organization, the CEO and the management team at some point feel powerless.
Yeah.
And you know what happens?
What's the
Every
point?
topic they will say, let's take it to the board.
Yeah.
You know why?
Yeah.
They have now learned
Yeah.
that let me not take the risk.
Yeah.
Let the board
Push it up,
approve.
yeah.
The board is saying, how can I take this decision? You take the decision. Ding dong bell, you go on.
Yeah.
So one of the things I have done in the last 3 years is we actually have pre-engagement with the boards before the meeting, so we know which are the topics which are going to be tricky, and we tend to go through them early enough so that the board doesn't become
it's consultative, it's collaborative, exactly.
And I think the second one, which the regulators also are telling us, which is a very good point, is bring diversity into your board.
Yeah.
Many boards have far too many governance people.
Yeah.
Too many auditors, too many lawyers,
Yes.
too many tax people, too
Yeah.
many regulatory people, and not enough business people.
Who can actually smell the opportunity, who understands the market, who can bring
And
in.
I understand from people who are very experienced that it's gone the other way.
Yeah.
20 years back, it was more business people and they were forced to bring in more.
So it's like
of
we
the
were
other
like this,
skill
now we're
sets.
like that, and we need to kind of recalibrate again, it sounds
Yes.
like. I'm seeing similar things, and also maybe this idea of like governance is super important, and if we don't have governance, we can create high value, but things ethically go wrong that we don't want. So you can say the responsibility of the board and the regulators to ensure that nothing goes wrong must be there. But it could also be that if we succeed too far at that, then nothing goes right either. And as speed of change and customer expectation and disruption is increased, the importance of innovation from a board level, having a mandate for innovation, is something that I'm often seeing defined very, very poorly. That translates down to poor mandate to CEO. What do we actually want to see from you in terms of innovation? Board actually doesn't really know, because there are not many businessy people sitting up there, and they're more worried about innovation going wrong than going right. And that then translates to the poor guy you talked about, or girl who's sitting, I'm the head of innovation, or I'm the chief digital or chief innovation officer, not having a clear mandate. And good luck, you have 3 or 5 or 10 people in your team. The rest of the organization is just worried about not getting anything wrong or maintaining the old business model. Is that something you can...
But your point on the digital chief, I think I've said this before, I don't like these titles.
No.
Why, do we have a chief electricity officer? It's like that. Digital for me is the lifeblood of the company.
Yeah.
I have a technology officer, I understand. He or she delivers technology. I have a business guy. But for me, digital is used by HR. Today,
it's everywhere, right?
My mobile is not with me, but on my mobile, I can apply for my leaves, I can look at my pay slip, I can do blah, blah, blah. So my business guy has to think digital. My finance stuff is done digitally. So again, it's all across the board.
So in line with that, I agree with that. However, there is this question of, once we know that companies' capability might be here, companies' results might be here, we need to go over here. How do we, even if we have a clear mandate from the board, clear mandate to the CEO, what role does innovation play for us to win? Is it, disruptive innovation, sustaining innovation? How much is sitting where? We know that maybe IT, the business, HR, marketing, whatever, have some capability now, but rapidly need to actually accelerate and develop new skills and maybe unlearn old behaviors. Who should drive that? How do we create the link between the CEO's mandate for innovation and change into all of these different functions? Do you think, like some folks I've been talking with say, well, maybe we should develop the same system as HR, where you have HR and HR business partners. So you could have kind of a COE for innovation, and then you have innovation business partners sitting out in each function. Or what are your thoughts on that?
So again, I think each company will have different methods of dealing with it. I'm very clear that innovation is my agenda.
It has to be CEO.
It has to be CEO's agenda. Why is that? Because for too long, BAU has been the focus of all CEOs. The reason is, in insurance, is very clear. If I have 10 million today, if I give it to agency or to bank assurance, that's where I'll have bigger bang for the buck, and I will never give it to someone else. So unless the CEO has this agenda of a future thinking mindset, it's never going to happen. That's the first one. The second part of it for me is culture eats strategy for breakfast. We've heard this so many times. How can one department develop a culture? They can't. It'll always be said, hey, you know what, whatever I'm going to innovate, that team there will define. No. So what we did was we did three things. One was we embraced agile. I'm not a big fan of very technical concepts.
No.
That is more for the team that's delivering the solution. They need to know it, of course. But for someone working in finance or in HR, what's the point of him knowing how many types of agile methodologies are there? It's frankly useless. So it's more about understanding agile, how to work within that framework. What's your role as a product owner?
And the people, a softer version of agile, not a hard.
So that's something we did.
Well, how do you see the role between HR? I mean, HR is always like kind of the most misunderstood. They feel underappreciated sometimes and so on. And, we need to be more strategic with the business. No one else has to call themselves business partner, but everyone's part of the business, right? So how do you see the role of HR?
HR plays a very important role in this whole program. Because for me, it's about culture change. It's about people's mindset change. And who best to facilitate it? HR is not responsible for it.
No.
They facilitate it. So my agenda, which is then crafted into a culture strategy, gets facilitated by HR, but
so owned
each
by
department
CEO,
then owns it.
But overall, CEO owns,
strategy,
and then cascaded out, and HR is kind of your support partner. And
all these kind of things, they facilitate it.
What would you say to the companies that structured it differently, where it's actually the CHRO who drives the culture piece and kind of has the responsibility for it also as a KPI and not the CEO?
See, the unfortunate part of the world we live in is, if you want to change the culture in operations, you need the COO to own it. If you want to change the culture in the sales organization in your company, you need the head of sales to own it.
So in that sense, there's a similarity with the HR question and innovation question, right? That it needs top leader ownership and clear accountability for each kind of sub-owner. And you can have some sort of enabler support function from either HR or a COE around innovation and agile. That comes back to the same question around CX, customer experience. For the customer to be happy at the end of the journey, many players need to do their part, and they need to be aligned, not just from one customer, but for many customers and many journeys and products, as large organizations are complex. This means that senior people need to spend more time together, but they're all spending so much time operating and complying, right? What would be your advice for other CEOs sitting with this realization, like, I need actually more alignment, but everyone is kind of pocketed out and doing their own thing, like you said, and then how come it doesn't glue together?
How does an insurance company work? You are in a meeting, you're discussing the future of this company. The first voice is the distributor's voice, because they hold us by our neck. So the first and foremost voice is always distribution. The second voice is the regulator voice. The first and second can change depending on the situation. The third voice is the shareholder voice. The fourth voice is the employee voice. There's one voice that's missing, the customer voice. It's never heard. It's lost.
Customer who?
That's why we started this thing of having an empty chair in the room. Reminding everyone. We copied it from, I think it's Zappos, but I may be wrong. Where we said, That's the customer in the room.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that the old traditional CMO role is dead.
Yeah.
And today I'm a big believer in the role of a chief customer officer.
Yeah.
Why do I say that? Just like how we have a strong distribution voice, a strong shareholder voice through the CFO typically, a strong governance voice through the governance heads, compliance regulator, an employee through HR and people and culture. We need to have that customer voice. And that role encapsulates across the company. Many times customer is said it's operations responsibility. Far away from it. You will see across different product lines. Sometimes our customer NPS is very good for claims, surprisingly for an insurance company, and sometimes very bad for buying.
Yeah.
Sometimes very good for buying and very bad in claims.
We saw similar, yeah.
So that's the point. Where the moment of truth for a customer in insurance is two, right? The first and the foremost is when they buy from a company.
Yeah.
And they say the best time to upsell insurance, the study after study that's come out, is the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Because if the buying experience is good, you can upsell.
Yeah.
The second is claims.
Yeah.
Claims is a wow moment or a whoa moment.
Yeah.
So then there is, of course, service, engagement, all of that. But these are the key moments of truth. So what the role of a customer officer is to be responsible for the customer journey.
Yeah.
And across the company, have the conversation on how to, what are the things we need to do.
Yeah.
Because what I say is there's only one truth, the customer. And I say this to many times at many forums to my agents and to my employees. Because there's a customer out there who's buying insurance is why there are agents.
Yeah.
Because there are agents, there are managers of agents. Because there are managers of agents, there is a chief agency officer. And because there's a sales agency channel, you need governance, you need finance, etc.
Yeah.
And because you have these departments, there's a CEO.
Yeah.
So everything starts with the customer. Unfortunately, somewhere down the lane, we've forgotten that customer. He said there was this really young, bright actuarial chap in the company who said, Eureka, I have something very innovative to show you. And he said, wow, okay, come. And the guy came in and he said, with this product, a customer can almost never claim. And the CEO said, that's actually not our business. But that's what has become over a period of time to this industry, that we actually think a product which we create where we don't give a customer. Yeah. You speak to a product guy, the first thing they write is exclusion. Yeah. And then they find some inclusion a little bit to put in there. Yeah. That's the mindset that needs to change. And that's why I believe in this industry, bite-sized insurance will become more and more popular. Instead of buying a comprehensive product which covers 10 things and does not cover 90 things, I'd rather buy a product which covers one thing or two things, but I know it covers those two things I need.
I get why.
Rather than, cover 10 things out of which 8 I don't need. And then 90 things that don't cover, probably 5 things are things I want.
What would you say in terms of, if we think a little bit more radical about future of work, future of organizations, kind of our organizations has morphed into this corporate monster they've become today to some extent, right? Where do you think, like, if we were to guess like 3-5 years ahead, how would, maybe from your industry, insurance, how would company look radically different? What might be removed or reduced significantly? What would be maybe new muscles or new additions to the body, to the animal? How would it evolve, do you think, or even transform?
So
will it be so different, or will it actually be more or less the same thing, just a bit more digital?
Okay. I wish I had the crystal ball so clear. I can give you some sense of where I think
your
things
guess,
may be. Some people may say 3 to 5 is too fast to have that kind of radical change.
Be 10 years,
you may be having more change. But I think 3 things will happen. The first one is insurance has 2 big issues, which we were discussing earlier. One is the most boring industry. It's top 5 boring industry in most countries.
Insurance?
Exactly. Young people don't want to join this industry. And the second one is it's always in the least 5 trusted industries, along with healthcare. It's a bit odd because we consider it a noble industry, but that's how we've made it. So to come back to your question, I think as insurance goes back to simplicity, goes back to customer, goes back to becoming more easier for the customer to understand, I think we'll start slowly attracting employees who are younger. I think the industry will become younger, which means I think this concept of needing big offices itself is going to be questioned, like many of you are, like this kind of a setup, WeWork type setup. You come into the office if you want to, if you don't want, don't come. And I think COVID has taught us that most of us don't need to come into an office. The lines between personal life and professional life are mirroring. For me, it's been great. I think this is the first time I've known my wife for 13 years. This is the first time we've spent so much time together.
Yeah, wonderful.
And I've taken care of my work. So it's kind of, you realize you can do two things together. The second one is, I think, the industry will fundamentally change. I think the big names that you hear today, many of them won't exist. They will have their Kodak moments. Some of them are trying very hard to not become a Kodak or a Nokia, but they will have their
Many
Kodak.
of them will.
They will have their Kodak moments because they're too traditional. They can't move. Their traditional distribution channels won't allow them to move. And I think there's going to be some of these smaller insurers who are really going to have a big say. They could be the next big players. Especially watch out for the Chinese insurance companies. I think the scale of innovation they do, none of us can match. Just cannot match. Look at the simple thing they have done. They have a main product in which they have e-commerce where a seller sells a product to a customer. And many times the customer says, this is not what I want. So they returned it back and the seller doesn't want to take it. So what did they do? They started selling shipment insurance. And they made several millions on it.
Just like that.
They solved their own problem, putting insurance and making the customer pay for it. And then people said, you know what's the traditional way? Hey, it will be misused, it'll be misused. They put an AI in. So any customer who returns 2, 3, 4 times, their premium is so high they cannot even buy it. They won't buy it. So there's way. The problem is our industry is too exception designed. Every time we design a product, risk, compliance, actuarial and underwriting people are discussing that one case which can happen out of a million times and saying, how can we solve that?
Instead of worry about the customer.
Instead of worry about the 99% of the time. So I think that's going to fundamentally change. The third aspect, I think, is the lines, and this is just my view. I feel the lines between banking and insurance will again start merging. I know they split over the last 100 years, but I think they're going to come back together. Because a lot of the financial services, the way we design it today,
assurance,
you are using, I'm sure most of us don't use cash. Like today I came in and if you ask me out for a coffee and you go to a shop where there is no card swipe or a wallet, I can tell you, I'll say, can I borrow some money because I won't have money.
Exactly.
Right? So we don't carry money with us today. So wallets, e-commerce, travel companies,
telco. How about telco?
Telcos. Telcos huge, right? Massive opportunity. And telcos, their basic business is also disrupted.
So they need
because
it as
they are
much.
not making money from the phone anymore. They're making money from data, and data costs are being challenged. So they need that revenue from other lines of business. So to your point, I think that's where I think the biggest change will happen, where these lines will merge, and all the concepts of this is how financial services should be, I think will be gone. Because the new age, I doubt whether my son who's 7 years old will ever see a bank in his life. Will ever see a bank. For me...
And certainly not cash.
Yes. For me, when I grew up, my first time I set up a bank account, when my first salary account, very excited, it was an event to go to a bank, to open the bank account, etc. If I tell a 23-year-old who's getting into industry today, I actually had to go to a branch and stand there, very exciting. Then after 5 days, they'll call you back. All your verification is done. Now sign on this for your bank account. 17 years back when I did this, it sounds a bit odd, but that's what I did. Today, you walk into into one of the branches where I have a bank account in India, I have to pay money to walk into the branch.
You're penalized for it.
Exactly. So the world is changing. So my kids are never going to see a bank. So why do I need, the traditional way of doing things? If he enters through a telco, he or she might decide, I'm going to do everything through the telco because I trust them. If he or she buys ticket through an airline and they trust the airline, they're going to say, I'm going to do everything with the airline. If they're offering me everything, why should I go elsewhere? You've seen in some of the countries the concept of buying data. So you can lock your data and somebody can ask to access your data for, from your personal data protection.
You can monetize it.
Exactly. And for me, that's the future. Because if company A, let's assume Telecom A has my data.
Yeah.
Then if Telecom A is helping me buy something else, they have to reward me for it. So what are they going to reward me with? That's the conversation. So I think it's going to be a lot of change that we're going to see.
Same in healthcare as well. Yeah.
And the last one for me is, I have a belief that other than very complicated commercial lines insurance products, insurance will move from what I call a pre-underwritten product to a post-underwritten. So what do I mean by that? Today, why is insurance not trusted? 2 reasons. One, I don't pay claim, or rather I don't pay the claim that the customer thinks they should get. But that has 2 sides to that discussion, but let's keep that aside for a minute. The second part is, many times I pay premiums for a service that I may or may not get ever in my lifetime. Example, a life policy.
Hopefully not,
Hopefully not, right? I may or may not get. Because if something happens to me, it only goes to my family. So I never experience that service. So the trust is never there. And it's not like buying this cup over here. I go to a store, I pay $10, I got this cup, I know whether it's good or not.
Thank God I did,
So that's the difference. So what I'm saying is, in a post-underwritten scenario, with all the connected devices we have, I have a wearable. So give me the data. Your health insurance premium at the end of the month is a function of how healthy you've been. Your car, telematics data, how well you've driven the car.
How much?
How many times have you traveled using a, travel app? I figure out your charge. So at the end of the month, I get something like an electricity bill, which says, this is my insurance bill. I have more trust because I've really used it, and you're charging me for it. It's a different discussion.
I guess you could say it's a trend that's very exciting. As a trend, you can say that's in a sense what DBS has been onto in terms of less banking and more utility, right?
Yes.
So it's almost like insurance should just happen in the background, be trusted and be informed by my evolving needs at any one time, moving up and down and shifting between different needs. One of the things that we have seen many organizations kind of do to kind of shift these behaviors to be, for example, more customer centric, is bringing in design practices, because just like Agile can give you speed and team ownership if you have that clear mandate. Same thing with customer centricity and design. So moving away from sitting inside the cubicle and the office on level 23, looking down at the market, to really actually getting your employees at any function, whether it's HR, marketing, product, IT, whatever, to know how to discover unmet needs.
So how do you, let me ask you a question. How do you bring the customer voice into your design experience?
So yesterday we just finished a lab with one of our big clients, and basically when we started the lab day 1, there was basically challenges given back to the mandate. We need these 2 things, something around customer experience, something around employee experience, and they had 2 kind of different teams working on it. When they then said, so what are we going to do? We said, well, we've actually arranged for customers to meet with you, and you're going to actually talk to both customers and non-customers.
Okay, nice.
You're going to talk to different types of employees. We then build a profile, a persona based on the insights that you have. We reframed it. So in many cases, they actually discover that whatever challenge they were given from the C-suite, when you talk to the market, that's actually not what the customers want, or at least you need to kind of bridge between the strategy of where the company wants to grow and what customers are actually telling you. This is actually my pain point. This is my main problem, right? So there's a bit of tweaking there, generating many ideas very quickly using some of the tools that we have, silent brainstorms, etc. But more importantly, filtering them again back to what was the customers wanted, what is it the company is looking for, because it obviously needs to link back to strategy. Quickly prototyping it and quickly showing it to customers again. So within 3 days, they had already discovered the need, ideated, tested it with customers, and then built the business case. Because you still, often these young teams that you mentioned, actually often better wired for this stuff than the experienced guys, because they don't know how to do it. So their knowledge is not getting in the way. But they need the old guys or girls, the senior guys to buy off on it. So it's also teaching them how to use these external insights inside the company to bring the video, bring the picture, show the data. And often young people have not learned that kind of stakeholder management. So that's where we coach.
It's like the famous marshmallow challenge, right? The one which goes the longest. And I think the facilitator told us that we were a bunch of CEOs who did it. And we were quite bad. And the facilitator told us the longest was done by a 6-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because they are uncluttered.
Because they failed so fast.
Exactly. They're very kinesthetic, right? That's the way they work. But coming back, one of the things I like, the point you talk about customer, I actually put myself out there. So what do I mean by that? when customer complained on Facebook, and I
Yeah.
noticed the complaint's gone on for some time, I actually contacted the customer on
Yeah,
Facebook.
directly.
And my team said, no, you can't do this. You can't put yourself out there. It's risky, blah, blah, blah. I said, it's okay. Let's see.
So not a direct message, but a public one.
Public one.
Wow.
And I had 6 such complaints which I directly handled.
Yeah.
Of course, then my team helped me solve it, but 6 problems, out of which 3 were customer not understanding our terms.
Yeah.
So there was some lack of understanding, but we also need to figure out why did that lack of understanding happen, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the remaining 50% were purely our process mistakes.
Yeah.
So that helped me figure out where were we wrong and what can we do. Like there was one example where a customer, it was a very emotional example, where a mother had lost her 27-year-old son, who was the breadwinner of the family. And we were going round and round in the claims.
Yeah.
And the person had died. We have a death certificate and we have the advertisement in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And we still hadn't paid claim because our reinsurer and we were having a ding-dong on where is the burial certificate. So this lady told me, apparently in the government burial, I don't know the details, in Malaysia it takes at least 6 months for it to come. So the point is the person has a death certificate and the person has the newspaper proof or whatever, and yet we are insisting on a burial certificate. For me, it was a real learning. And then I called up the reinsurer and we waived it.
Yeah.
Since then, we haven't insisted on this. Yeah. I know why it was done, because there's been some fraud done where people actually have death certificates created and the burial wasn't done. So, yes, there have been cases, but we also need to be sensitive as an industry.
That empathy with the family, because
the empathy, the sensitivity. Just sitting across the table discussing with that lady that day was an unbelievably emotional experience for me. And so for me, it actually made me realize what a beautiful industry I work in.
Yeah.
But I am making it as far as possible from the customer with these experiences. So to your point, that's why I asked you about customer voice. For me, it is the moment of truth.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think, like, even when we do that, often the reaction we get, and even with C-suite, or it can be young hypos or management trainees, is like, questions we get are like, so is that a bot we'll be talking to? No, it's a real customer. Oh, you mean like on a phone call? No, they'll be coming here, or we'll be going out. Even better, if we have time in the program, we actually take them out in the community, because it's even more like seeing how customers live, how they eat, how they, seeing how they make decisions is such an eye-opening opportunity. And many companies have been relying on NPS scores or feedback surveys and so on, and they have their place and value, but that's one myopic view of it. And you only get answers to what you ask about. But when you go out and experience, you get a much more contextual, rich experience, which inspires innovation, right? And one of the teams we work with, for example, this was actually only a 2-day experience. They did so well that the leadership actually said, we'll give them some time to work on this. And they actually found very valuable business solutions far away from the challenge that they were given. But highly valuable, actually more like business model innovation that they kind of stumbled over because they observed how customers were sitting clicking on the screen and how they didn't like the experience on a mobile, and then they get references to games that they were playing and things like so. So I think that's where I'm seeing not enough time spent, is this kind of customer obsession and curiosity, and that's where I'm seeing that many of the clients we work with are using design to discover those, but it's still, I think, not enough clarity on the expectation, and not enough, ownership at each side of the business. So some people are doing it, other people are still fast asleep, to be completely honest, in many large companies, right? But I'm very grateful that you could join us today, and thanks for sharing your experience, and I'm sure our viewers will also enjoy this very much. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.